Imagine your absolute favorite, most reliable, and most affordable local food just suddenly vanishes from the supermarket shelves.
Oh man, that is the worst feeling.
Right. You walk down the aisle, and the space where it usually sits is just completely empty. But you go home, you turn on the evening news, and the anchor announces a record-breaking historic harvest of that exact same food.
I mean, it sounds as a mistake, right?
Totally.
It sounds impossible. Like, how can a country have a record amount of food out in nature, but absolutely zero of it in the actual stores?
Yeah, exactly. And today, we are traveling to the beautiful country of Chile to solve this really bizarre mystery.
I am very excited for this one.
You too. So welcome to a special deep dive edition of No More Freezing, where we take real-world stories and, use them to warm up your English skills and your curiosity. I am thrilled to be here with you, our listener, and with our resident expert today to figure out what is happening in the South Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here too. And the situation you just described, it's not some made-up hypothetical scenario.
No, it's really happening.
It is happening right now in Chile with a very famous, very popular fish called the South Pacific Jack mackerel, or in Spanish, they call it jurel.
Jurel.
Yeah. Right now, the ocean has more of this fish swimming in it than it has had in decades. The population is incredibly healthy.
Which is great news.
It is. And the government even just gave permission to catch a record-breaking number of them. But people are literally joking on social media about, trading luxury city apartments for a couple of cans of jurel because you simply cannot buy it anywhere.
That is just so crazy to me. And that is the mission of our deep dive today. We're taking a whole stack of reports, news articles, and scientific data from Chile, and we're going to answer one simple question. If the ocean is full of fish, why can't people buy them?
It's a great question.
But to start, I feel like we need to understand the fish itself. For those of us who, don't live in South America, what kind of fish are we actually talking about here?
So Jack mackerel, or jurel, is what biologists call a pelagic fish.
Okay, pelagic. That sounds very scientific.
It does, but it just simply means it lives out in the open ocean.
Oh.
Yeah, it doesn't hide down on the bottom of the seafloor, and it doesn't really stay too close to the beaches either. It swims in these massive groups out in the deep, open water.
Got it.
But for the people of Chile, it's much more than just a biological species. It is a fundamental part of their daily life.
When you say fundamental, do you mean it's like a luxury item? Or is it something everyday people eat?
Oh, very much an everyday food. It's a staple.
Okay.
It's usually sold in these tall cans, kind of similar to how you might buy canned tuna or salmon in other parts of the world. And because it has traditionally been incredibly affordable and just full of protein, families really rely on it.
So it's super versatile then?
Exactly. You can mix it into a fresh salad, you can make warm fried croquettes out of it, or you can honestly just eat it plain with some lemon. It's that cheap, reliable friend in the kitchen pantry that you can always count on when you need to make a quick meal.
That makes total sense. So when it disappears from the supermarket, it's a huge disruption. It's not like a store running out of expensive caviar or fancy cheese, right? It's more like a store running out of bread or rice or milk.
That captures the feeling perfectly. People really depend on it. But to really appreciate how crazy this current shortage is, we actually have to look back at the history of this fish.
Oh, right, because there's a whole backstory here.
There is. The story of the jurel is actually one of the most incredible comeback stories in the history of ocean conservation.
I do love a good comeback story. So are we talking about a situation where the fish was almost extinct?
Very close, yeah. Back in the 1990s and continuing into the early 2010s, this fish was in serious, critical trouble. The population was basically collapsing.
Let me guess. Overfishing. Like too many massive boats taking too many fish out of the water at once.
That is exactly the core of it. There were simply too many boats from too many different countries taking just way too many fish. The fish could not reproduce. They couldn't have babies fast enough to replace the ones that were being caught and put into cans.
Wow, that's sad.
It was a bad situation. We have a detailed report here from the Chilean National Congress Library, which tracks this data very carefully. And they measure the health of a fish population using a term called spawning biomass.
Okay, spawning biomass. That sounds a bit like a dense science textbook.
Yeah, it does a little.
Let's break that down into simpler English for you, our listeners, so we're all on the same page.
Let's do that. So biomass simply means the total weight of all the fish in a specific area of the ocean.
Okay, total weight.
Right. And spawning means reproducing or having babies. So if we put those words together, the spawning biomass is the total weight of all the adult fish in the water that are old enough to reproduce.
Got it. So scientists don't just, like, count every single individual fish. They specifically track how many adult fish are swimming around and having babies.
Exactly.
And then they compare that to how many fish the fishing boats are actually taking out of the water.
That is the whole calculation right there. And the numbers from the year 2012 were absolutely terrifying for the scientific community.
How bad were they?
Well, in 2012, the spawning biomass of the jack mackerel was down to a truly critical level. It was only between 8% and 16% of its original natural size.
Wait, only 8 to 16%.
Yeah.
That means roughly 90% of the adult fish were just gone.
Gone. Completely gone. The official status of the fish was listed as overexploited. It was in real danger of a complete ecological collapse. Like, if the fishing fleets didn't change their behavior immediately, the fish would have disappeared forever.
And the entire industry would have died right along with it.
Exactly.
You know, it helps to think of the fish population kind of like a savings account at a bank.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. If you have money in a savings account, the bank gives you a little bit of free money every month called interest. And if you are smart and you only spend that extra interest, your main savings account stays full forever. You never run out of money.
That is a brilliant way to look at it, because it really is all about balance.
But it sounds like back in 2012, Chile and the international fishing fleets weren't just spending the interest. They were spending all their main savings.
Oh,
They
absolutely.
were taking so much out of the bank that the account was almost at zero.
They were completely spending the savings. They were going bankrupt, ecologically speaking. So the authorities realized they had to take some really drastic action to let that bank account grow again.
But how do you actually enforce that? Because fish swim all over the Pacific Ocean. They don't respect invisible country borders. A fish can be in Chilean waters on a Monday and then in international waters on a Thursday.
And that right there is the trickiest part of ocean conservation. Because these fish are highly migratory, meaning they travel huge distances across the sea, one single country just cannot protect them alone.
Right, because if Chile stops fishing, but another country keeps fishing just outside Chile's borders, the fish still die.
Exactly. So Chile had to work with a massive international group. Specifically, they worked through an organization called the South Pacific Regional Fisheries Management Organization.
That's a long name.
It is. In Spanish, the abbreviation is ORPPS.
Okay, so the ORPPS is like an international committee that makes the strict rules for fishing in that specific part of the world.
They are the rule makers, yeah. And they took extreme but very necessary measures. They closed access, meaning they did not allow any new fishermen or new boats to start hunting the jack mackerel.
Makes sense. Stop adding new people taking money out of the bank.
Right. And they managed the existing fleets using very strict scientific limits. And over the next decade, from about 2017 up to today, the plan actually worked. It worked miraculously well.
That is so great to hear. So they stopped spending the main savings, they let the bank account grow, and they just waited. How much is in the bank account now? Like, what does the population look like today?
According to the latest scientific reports, by 2024 and moving into 2025, that spawning biomass again, the adult fish capable of having babies hit an amazing 17.7 to 17.9 million tons.
Wow, 17.9 million tons. Let's give you, our listener, some context here. What was that number in the past, before the recovery?
Just to compare, back in 1997, it was only 4.5 million tons.
That is an unbelievable recovery. They went from near ecological bankruptcy to having more fish than they have had in almost 30 years.
Yeah, the fish made a total robust recovery. It's now considered a highly healthy, stable population. The fleets are finally only spending the interest. They are catching only what the ocean can naturally replace every single year.
So this brings us to the next logical step in our deep dive. If the bank account is completely full, and you have been a very responsible manager, the bank usually gives you a reward. The government obviously allows the fishing fleets to withdraw a little more, right?
They do. And in the fishing industry, that reward comes in the form of a larger fishing quota.
Let's make sure that vocabulary word is clear for everyone listening.
Yeah.
A quota just means a strict limit, correct?
Yes, exactly. A fishing quota is a firm legal limit on exactly how many tons of fish a specific country, a company, or even a person is allowed to catch in a single calendar year.
Okay.
Think of it like a speed limit on a highway, but for fishing. If the limit is 1 million tons, the moment you catch 1,000,001 tons, you are breaking the law.
And because Chile played such a massive role in saving this fish, and the fish population is now so incredibly healthy, the International ORPPS organization just gave Chile a massive reward.
A historic reward, actually. The ORPPS recently granted Chile a 25% increase in its jack mackerel quota for the year 2025.
A 25% jump in a single year is huge. Let's look at the exact numbers from our sources here. The legal limit for Chile goes from 819,000 tons in 2024 to over 1 million tons in 2025. Specifically, 1,024,000 tons.
Yeah, and we also have a government decree from the Ministry of Economy in Chile that looks even further into the future. This decree sets a global quota for the year 2026 at even higher numbers, over 1.1 million tons.
That is a lot of fish.
It is. And this massive amount of fish is then divided up carefully between large industrial fishing companies with huge ships and the smaller, local, artisanal fishermen.
What fascinates me here is what this actually means for everyday people.
Yeah.
We aren't just talking about abstract numbers on a spreadsheet. We are talking about the economy, about real jobs, about families.
Definitely.
According to our sources, this 25% increase in the quota is worth over 63 million US dollars.
Yeah, that is a massive, life-changing injection of money into the local economy. And it is incredibly important for a specific area called the Biobío region, which is down in the south-central part of Chile.
Tell us more about the Biobío region. Why is this specific place so tied to the fate of the jack mackerel?
Well, the Biobío region is essentially the beating heart of the Chilean fishing industry. About 90% of all the jack mackerel caught by Chile is caught in the waters right off the coast of this region, in an area known as the Exclusive Economic Zone.
So this fish is their local treasure. It's the engine of their regional economy.
The absolute engine, and the region desperately needs that engine to run smoothly too. The unemployment rate in Biobío is quite high right now, hovering around 10%, but there are 3,500 people whose jobs depend directly on this specific jack mackerel industry.
Wow, 3,500 people.
Yeah, we're talking about the sailors working on the rough seas, the truck drivers transporting the catch, and very importantly, the thousands of women who work inside the processing plants. They are the ones cutting, cleaning, and canning the fish.
Let me paint a picture here for you. This quota increase was supposed to be a golden era for these workers. More fish allowed to be caught means the ships go out more often, the trucks drive more routes, the canning plants stay open longer, paying more overtime.
Exactly.
It means more work, more money, and more financial security for those 3,500 families.
That was the dream. That was the expectation. The fish are physically there in the ocean. The legal permission to catch them is officially granted. Everything was absolutely perfect on paper.
Which brings us crashing back into our big paradox.
Yes, it does.
If we have almost 18 million tons of fish swimming in the water, and the international organizations just gave the green light to catch 1 million of them, why is a supermarket worker on social media showing a video of empty shelves?
It's so wild.
Why are they saying they won't have any canned jurel until the end of the year? Where's the disconnect between the ocean and the grocery store?
Okay, so to solve that mystery, we actually have to look up from the water and look at the weather. We have to introduce the real culprit of this story, which is a powerful climate phenomenon known as El Niño.
Ah, El Niño. We hear that name constantly on the global news. It translates to the boy in Spanish, but in weather terms, it's just a massive disruptor.
It is a massive disruptor. In the simplest terms, El Niño is a natural, recurring climate event that happens every few years. And what it does is it drastically changes the wind patterns, which then causes the surface temperature of the Pacific Ocean to rise.
So it gets warm.
Yeah, the water off the coast of South American countries like Chile and Peru gets much, much warmer than usual.
It's basically like the ocean catches a fever, the surface gets really hot. But how does that affect our fish? Do jack mackerel hate warm water?
They absolutely hate it. Jack mackerel thrive in very cold water that is rich in nutrients. That cold water environment is where they find their main source of food, which includes these tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill.
Okay, cold water equals food.
Right. But when El Niño happens and the surface water gets warm, the whole ecosystem changes. The water becomes too hot for the fish to be comfortable, and worse, their food source either disappears or moves away.
Wait. If the water gets too hot and the food disappears, do the fish die? Because if millions of fish die, that totally ruins the whole healthy, recovered population story we just talked about.
No, the fish do not die. And this is a really vital distinction to make. They simply migrate. They move.
Ooh, phew, okay.
Remember earlier when we said fish don't respect borders? Well, They also don't stay in uncomfortable water if they can avoid it. When the water at the top of the ocean near the coast gets too warm, the jack mackerel just dive much deeper into the ocean where the water is still cold. Or they swim very far away from the coast, literally hundreds of miles out into the deep sea, searching for cooler temperatures and their beloved krill.
Think of it like this. Imagine you're at a really fun, crowded party in a large indoor room.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Everyone is having a great time, the music is playing, but suddenly, in the middle of a hot summer night, the air conditioning in the room completely breaks.
Oh, that sounds incredibly uncomfortable.
It is. The room gets incredibly hot, sweaty, and miserable. But do the people at the party simply disappear? Do they die?
No.
No. They just leave the main room, they migrate out to the cooler hallway, or they go stand outside on the balcony to catch some fresh air.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. The guests are still at the party, they just aren't on the main dance floor anymore. The fish did the exact same thing. They didn't vanish from existence, they just left the dance floor near the Chilean coast and moved to the cooler hallway deep underwater and far out to sea.
That makes perfect sense biologically.
Yeah.
But if I'm a fisherman, why is that a problem? The fishermen have huge, powerful boats, don't they? Why can't they just drive the boats out to the hallway and catch them there?
Well, because the logistics completely change. According to Achilles Sepulveda, a leading expert from the Fisheries Research Institute in Chile, also known as INPESCA, this warm water event is an oceanographic anomaly.
Meaning a weird ocean event.
Right. He explains that because these fish are highly migratory, when they move to that cooler hallway, they don't stay in nice, tight, convenient groups anymore. They scatter. They become highly dispersed.
Let me make sure I understand. Instead of swimming together in a massive, dense group that is really easy to catch in a net, they spread out over thousands of miles of ocean.
Exactly. Going back to your party analogy, imagine trying to find a few scattered guests wandering around in a massive, dark, sprawling hallway compared to easily spotting a huge group of people tightly packed together on a brightly lit dance floor.
I see the problem. It becomes much harder to find enough fish in one single spot to make it worth throwing those massive fishing nets into the water.
And this brings us to the ripple effect.
A ripple effect is when one single event causes a chain reaction of other events.
Yes. Because the fish are dispersed and hiding in deep, distant waters, the entire human supply chain just breaks down. Let's look at the actual catch numbers from this year. Normally, by the month of May, the commercial fishing fleets have already caught about 55% to 60% of their entire annual quota.
They try to catch as much as possible early in the season to secure their profits, right?
But this year, because of El Niño, by May, they only managed to catch about 28% of their quota.
28%. That is less than half of what they normally bring in by that time of year. That is a massive drop in production.
It is, and the situation gets even more challenging. Because it is so difficult to find these scattered fish, around 80% of the entire industrial fishing fleet has been stuck in port. They aren't even leaving the docks.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here. If you have a massive quota and you know the fish are out there somewhere, why would 80% of the boats just sit in the port? Why don't they just keep driving around the ocean until they find them? Isn't some fish better than no fish?
You would think so, but it really comes down to pure economics. Going out to sea in a massive industrial fishing vessel is unbelievably expensive.
I guess fuel isn't cheap.
Not at all. The companies have to pay for thousands of gallons of fuel, food, and wages for the entire crew, and general maintenance for the ship. If a huge industrial ship goes out for 5 days, burns tens of thousands of dollars of fuel, and comes back with empty nets because the fish were too deep or too scattered, the company loses a fortune.
Right.
From a business perspective, it is actually cheaper to just keep the boats tied up at the dock, pay the minimum costs, and wait for the water to cool down.
Okay, that makes total sense. You don't spend $50,000 to catch $5,000 worth of fish.
Exactly.
But wait, our sources mentioned that some boats did go out. Some companies took the risk. What happened to them?
Some boats did go out on exploration missions, hoping to get lucky. But when they finally managed to find some groups of jack mackerel, they discovered another serious problem. The fish they found in those specific areas were mostly juveniles.
Juveniles, meaning baby fish. Fish that are too young to reproduce.
Yes, young fish that haven't contributed to that spawning biomass we talked about earlier. And here is where Chile's strict sustainable management rules come back into play. To protect the future of the species, To protect that full bank account, the fishermen are not allowed to catch the babies.
Wow.
Yeah. When they pull up nets full of juvenile fish, they have to abandon those specific fishing areas entirely.
That is rough. So
Yep.
they finally spend the money, they finally find the fish, and they still have to turn around and go home empty-handed to protect the ecosystem.
It is incredibly frustrating for the crews, but absolutely necessary for the long-term survival of the jurel.
Okay, I think I see the full picture now. Let's connect all these dots for you, our listener. The ocean naturally warms up because of the El Niño weather cycle. The adult jack mackerel hate the warm water, so they migrate to deep, faraway waters to stay cool. The fishing boats either can't find them because they are too scattered, or it's simply too expensive to burn fuel looking for them. So 80% of the boats stay parked at the port.
Keep going, follow the chain.
If the boats stay at the port, they don't bring any fresh fish back to the land. If there are no fish arriving at the docks, the large processing plants have absolutely no raw materials to work with. The conveyor belts stop, the canning machines stop. And if the plants aren't producing cans of jurel,
The delivery trucks have nothing to transport. The supermarkets don't get their weekly deliveries. And suddenly, the grocery store shelves are completely empty.
the paradox is completely solved. It's a massive chain reaction triggered by warm water. We have millions of tons of fish, but they are completely invisible to the supply chain.
And if we step back and look at this from a broader perspective, it highlights a really important concept. What we are witnessing in Chile right now is an operational crisis, not an ecological collapse.
Now, let's make sure you understand the nuance there. What is the difference between an operational crisis and an ecological one?
Well, an ecological collapse means nature itself is broken. It means the fish are dead, the species is disappearing, the ocean environment is failing. That is the nightmare scenario that almost happened back in 2012 when the population dropped to 8%.
Right. That is when the bank account was literally at zero.
But an operational crisis means nature is perfectly fine, but our human systems, our logistics, and our machines just cannot access it.
That's a huge difference.
It really is. The fish population today is incredibly healthy and thriving. They are just temporarily out of reach of our human nets. Our business operations are failing, not the environment.
From an environmental standpoint, that is actually a very comforting thought. Nature's resilient. The fish are okay.
Yes.
But I imagine it is absolutely not comforting for the people whose livelihoods depend on catching and processing those fish, right? We talked earlier about those 3,500 jobs in the Bio region. How are they surviving this operational crisis?
Honestly, it is devastating for them. In our sources, we hear directly from a woman named Juana Silva. She is a prominent representative for the Federation of Plant Workers in the region. She has been going to the media, sounding the alarm about severe job instability. If there are no fish entering the processing plants, the hourly workers just don't get paid.
Because they can't just stand around an empty factory doing nothing.
Exactly. The fishing companies try their best to hold on to their permanent, full-time staff because they know the fish will eventually return. But for the seasonal workers or families who live paycheck to paycheck, this uncertainty is terrifying.
I can't even imagine.
They are watching the weather reports, just praying for the ocean to cool down so they can go back to work and feed their families.
That really shows the human cost of a changing climate. Even when the fish survive the warm water, the humans on land suffer the economic consequences.
We really do.
But wait, we have mostly been talking about the massive industrial ships and the big factory plants.
Yeah.
There is another group of people involved in this industry, isn't there? What about the smaller, local fishermen?
Ah, yes. The artisanal fishermen. This introduces a whole new layer of complexity and conflict to the story, and it is pretty fascinating.
Okay, let's explore this conflict. And just a quick note to you listening.
Yeah.
Whenever we look at a complex situation with different groups of people arguing, we are going to report exactly what they are saying impartially.
Right.
We are not taking sides. We're just looking at the facts and opinions provided in our sources to help you understand the full political picture.
That is definitely the best approach. So on one side, we have the industrial sector, the massive corporate companies with huge ships saying to the government, this is a severe crisis, we can't catch our quota, the weather is ruining our business. But on the other side, we have the artisanal sector, represented by fierce leaders like Sarah Garrido. She represents a national corporation of artisanal fisherwomen. And she is aggressively pushing back against this whole crisis narrative being sold by the big companies.
Pushing back? Why would she do that? Doesn't the warm El Niño water affect everyone in the ocean equally? Like a warm ocean is a warm ocean whether your boat is big or small.
The water affects the fish equally, sure, but the law affects the fishermen differently.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Sarah Garrido points out a crucial legal difference between how massive industrial boats and small artisanal boats are allowed to operate in Chile. The huge industrial ships have legal permission to move all over the national waters. They can chase the migrating fish basically wherever they go along the coastline.
So if the fish migrate hundreds of miles north or south to find cold water, the big industrial boats can theoretically pull up their anchors and follow them, assuming they are willing to pay the massive fuel costs.
Yes, they have the legal right to roam. But the artisanal fishers, the small local boats, do not have that freedom. They operate under very strict regional zoning limits. They are legally tied to their specific local area.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. They cannot follow the fish hundreds of miles away into another region's waters. If the fish leave their specific local zone, the artisanal fishermen are simply out of luck.
Oh, wow. So bringing back our air conditioning analogy, the big industrial guys are at least legally allowed to walk down a long hallway to find the people from the party. But the artisanal fishermen are locked inside the hot room. They legally cannot leave their zone.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it. They are trapped by the zoning laws. So Sarah Garrido is looking at the industrial companies and saying, wait a minute. If anyone is truly suffering from these migrating fish, it is us, the small boats. We are the ones who are trapped.
That's a really valid point.
She even notes that there are a few specific zones where artisanal fishers have actually managed to catch some fish, but their legal quotas are so small they can't make a real profit anyway.
Let me play devil's advocate again here. Is Sarah Garrido suggesting the big industrial companies are just pretending they can't catch the jack mackerel? Or is she saying the big companies are using a real climate event to manipulate the government?
She is suggesting they're using a real climate event to exploit a political loophole.
Interesting.
Yeah, she voices a very specific, very serious suspicion in our sources. She worries that the industrial sector is intentionally hyping up this temporary jurel crisis as an excuse to pressure the Chilean government into giving them a massive favor.
Pressure the government for what kind of favor? If the fish aren't there, what can the government possibly do?
Well, if they can't catch jack mackerel, they want permission to catch something else. Specifically, Garrido fears the industrial companies will demand the government allow them to use a highly controversial fishing method called bottom trawling, or arrastre in Spanish, to catch a completely different species, which is the jumbo squid, known locally as the jibia.
Let me just pause and explain bottom trawling for our listeners, just so everyone has the environmental context here. Bottom trawling is a method where a massive boat drags a huge, heavy-weighted net right across the bottom of the ocean floor.
Right.
It scoops up the squid, sure, but it also catches and crushes absolutely everything else in its path. It can be incredibly destructive to coral reefs and the delicate ocean habitat.
It is widely considered one of the most destructive ways to fish. And the artisanal fishermen absolutely despise bottom trawling because it destroys the fragile marine environment that they rely on for their daily, small-scale fishing.
So they are really worried.
Yeah, so Sarah Garrido is basically issuing a public warning. She is saying, we are watching you carefully. Do not let the massive corporations use the missing jack mackerel as an excuse to start destroying the ocean floor just to catch squid.
That is incredibly complex. It really shows how everything in a country's economy and environment is deeply connected. When nature suddenly changes the rules, like when the water gets a little too warm, different groups of people feel the economic pain very differently.
Absolutely.
And naturally, they advocate for entirely different political solutions based on their own survival.
It perfectly illustrates the complex, often messy politics of the global fishing industry, and it puts the government regulators in a very difficult, very stressful position.
So how is the Chilean government actually handling this intense pressure? You have massive corporations losing millions of dollars in fuel, small artisanal fishermen feeling trapped by the laws, and thousands of plant workers terrified about losing their paychecks.
The government is trying to walk a very fine line. The Undersecretary of Fisheries, a man named Osvaldo Urrutia, has publicly stated that the government is monitoring the employment impacts very, very closely.
Okay, good.
They are watching the entire supply chain to see how they might be able to help the factory workers survive the shortage. But they are also trusting the science. And recently, there have been a few small silver linings.
We love a silver lining. What is the good news?
Recently, research vessels have spotted small signs of the fish slowly returning. They have seen some good-sized adult jack mackerel near a place called Isla Santa Maria.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. It is too early to declare that things are completely back to normal, but it proves the science is correct. The water temperatures will eventually cool down, the El Niño cycle will end, and the fish will return to their traditional coastal spots.
That makes perfect sense. El Niño is a natural cycle. It comes, it warms things up, and then it goes away. The ocean's fever eventually breaks.
Precisely.
Mm.
And this is why it is so incredibly important for countries to rely on good, solid science, like the constant monitoring done by INPESCA and the strict quota management enforced by the ORPPS.
Right.
Because Chile and its partners worked so hard to save the fish population back in 2012, they now have a strong, resilient, massive biological resource that can easily survive these weird temporary weather events. If the population was still at 8%, this El Niño might have wiped them out completely.
Wow. It really is an amazing story of how human conservation can actually work when countries cooperate. Let's summarize the key takeaways of this deep dive for you, just to make sure we have all the pieces of this complex puzzle put together.
I think a summary is a great idea.
The paradox we started with is officially solved. Does Chile really have more jack mackerel swimming in the ocean than they have had in 30 years? Yes. The strict conservation efforts worked beautifully, and the biological bank account is full.
Definitely full.
Did the international authorities reward Chile with a historic 25% increase in their legal fishing quota for the year 2025? Yes, they absolutely did.
But having permission to catch fish doesn't mean the fish cooperate.
Exactly. Wait, let me rephrase that. You hit the nail on the head. A natural climate phenomenon called El Niño warmed up the surface of the Pacific Ocean. The fish didn't die, but they absolutely hated the warm water. So they migrated to deep, cold, distant waters where the traditional fishing nets just couldn't easily reach them.
Right.
Because the massive boats couldn't find them, the factories on land couldn't can them. And because the factories couldn't can them, the supermarket shelves ended up completely empty.
It is a flawless summary. The entire human supply chain was completely broken simply by a change in water temperature.
It really makes you realize how incredibly fragile our modern food systems can be. Even when humans do everything perfectly right with science, quotas, and sustainability, Mother Nature still has the final, absolute say in what ends up on our dinner tables.
Mother Nature always holds the winning hand.
She really does. So to you, our listener, we have a question for you to consider. Have you ever experienced a weird, sudden shortage in your own country? Has a basic product you buy every single week just vanished from the grocery store shelves because of a random weather event?
It happens much more often than you might think. In fact, our source documents briefly mentioned that these exact same storm systems and shifting weather patterns in Chile also recently affected the harvest of avocados, or paltas as they call them down there, causing some major anxiety about availability and soaring prices.
Oh, you do not want to mess with the avocados. People take their avocado toast very seriously.
They really do.
But in all seriousness, weather-disrupting food is a global issue.
Yeah.
We would love to hear your personal stories. If you want a great way to practice your English writing skills, leave us a comment. Tell us about a time a severe storm, a drought, or a flood changed what was available in your local supermarket. And if you have a fascinating topic or a mystery you want us to do a deep dive on next time, please suggest it.
It really is a fantastic way to practice communicating in English, and we genuinely love reading about your diverse experiences from all over the world.
Before we sign off, though, I think we need to leave our listener with something deep to think about. A final, thought-provoking idea to mull over.
I have one, and it connects the specific Chilean story directly to the much bigger, global picture of our planet's future. Throughout this deep dive, we kept saying that El Niño is a temporary cycle, right?
Right.
The ocean gets warm, the fish leave, the ocean eventually cools down, and the fish come back.
Yeah, it's a natural, recurring cycle that has happened for thousands of years.
But here's the provocative question we all need to ponder. As human-driven global climate change slowly and permanently warms the world's oceans year after year, will these temporary migrations suddenly become permanent?
Oh, wow, I hadn't thought of that.
Think about the implications. Could a country like Chile, with a massive, healthy fish population, a country that sacrificed for decades to save their fish, suddenly find themselves with empty nets forever, simply because the overall ocean temperature rose by 2 degrees and the fish decided to move to a colder country permanently?
That is a really chilling thought, going back to the party analogy. If the room stays hot forever, the guests never ever come back from the hallway. The fish just become permanent citizens of a different ocean, and the local economy collapses anyway.
It perfectly highlights that in the near future, sustainable management won't just be about counting how many fish are in the water. It will be about predicting where the ocean environment itself is moving.
Well, that is definitely a heavy but necessary concept to mull over. Thank you all for spending your time with us on this deep dive. Keep practicing your English, stay curious about the world around you, and we will see you next time on No More Freezing.